Mountains, 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 mountains! Georgia is famed for its geography, specifically, its mountains. These amazing feats of nature have been Georgia's saving grace, bringing in millions of tourists over the past decade. But could geography also be Georgia's downfall? Many political scientists, economists, and geographers point out that mountains are detrimental to economic development. Building transit infrastructure through mountains is extremely expensive, arable land is hard to find, and mountains are, well, a gigantic wall that tend to be really good at dividing people. This means an increase in the competition for resources, both natural resources and from the government, which often leads to political and economic division. For Georgia, this is certainly true. Just look at where most of Georgia's development has been occurring. But there's a flaw in this logic. Look at countries such as Austria, Switzerland, Norway, and Italy. All are mountainous, all are highly developed, and all are generally peaceful. So what about Georgia's geography is so detrimental? The answer lies not in topography, but in the field of geopolitics. To understand this, we first need to understand one of the primary theories of geopolitics, Halford Mackinder's the world island theory. Mackinder lived between 1861 and 1947, but his interpretation of the world is scarily correct even today. His theory is based on the belief that Eurasia is the center of the world, both politically and economically. The problem, of course, is that this area is huge. Mackinder divided Eurasia into two parts, the Heartland and the Inner Crescent. The Outer Crescent is Africa, the Americas, and Oceania. The Heartland consists of Siberia and Central Asia. This part of Eurasia is impossible to invade by sea and nearly impossible to invade by land, just ask Napoleon. However, its control is crucial to controlling Eurasia, and therefore the world, since controlling the Heartland allows unfettered access to both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The Inner Crescent is the rest of Eurasia, continental Europe, the Middle East, India, and Eastern Asia. It is in the Inner Crescent where the battles for the Heartland will take place. The zone between the Heartland and the Inner Crescent is known as the Shatter Belt. Amazingly, if you look at where most of the major wars and battles have taken place over the past century or so, you can clearly see what the Shatter Belt is. You have the Great Game between the British and Russian empires in the Himalayas, the Anglo-Saxon Convention, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, the European and Pacific theaters of World War II, the Tibetan conflict, the Indochina Wars, the Korean and Vietnam Wars, the Kashmiri conflict, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the Gulf Wars, the Yugoslav Wars, Nagorno-Karabakh, Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Transnistria, the American invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, the Syrian Civil War, and now, most recently, Donbass. What's more, most of the world's major world powers have aimed to take control of the Eurasian continent, from the Axis powers connecting Nazi Germany with Japan, the USSR attempting to expand from the Heartland to the Inner Crescent, the US attempting to go from the Inner Crescent to the Heartland with the creation of NATO and CETO, and now China's One Belt and One Road project. So how does any of that relate to Georgia? Georgia lies smack in the middle of the western half of the Shatter Belt. This means that Georgia's geographical location on the world's major conflict ring will continue to influence its politics, and this certainly couldn't be more true than today. Georgia is an aspiring EU and NATO country. In fact, it is the largest per capita non-NATO contributor to NATO missions. Georgia has routinely been called one of the world's best reformers by both the EU and NATO along with other major world organizations, and Georgia is less corrupt than many EU countries. Yet, thanks to its location in the Shatter Belt, it will probably never see full EU or NATO membership. Additionally, this means that far-off countries such as China will want to see their influence in Georgia grow, since controlling Georgia means controlling an important piece of the Inner Crescent. This means that the Georgian government must find a way to balance the will of the Georgian people with the country's geopolitical reality, which has proven a deadly task a little over a decade ago. If Georgia's government is smart, it will recognize that Georgia's geography doesn't have to be a curse, but rather a blessing in disguise. For more information about Georgia, visit our website, www.geopolitics.org. www.visiting-georgia.com. Thanks for watching.